look at that, guys. The trees are turning. It's amazing how much 1 week does. I think just that tree right there in the middle was starting to change, but now we got this one. And about another week, they'll all be colored. The neighbor's tree over there. Pretty orange. Hey everybody, we're back in the garage and we're back working on engines. And what we're going to do today is we're going to tear this thing down. This is an air-cooled Volkswagen short block. Basically it's a short block because there's no cylinders and no heads on it. This is for the buggy build. If you've been following along, you know I've got a friend with a dune buggy who's got a problem with his his engine. So check out the previous video if you kind of want to see what my next build is going to be. As always, if you have any questions or want to see anything, please let me know. And if you like what I do, please subscribe to the channel. I'm just going to kind of show you the tools you're going to need and maybe a couple tricks and a couple, especially one thing to look for when you're tearing this stuff down. Because it is fairly simple. I mean, I always say if I can do it, you can do it. It is fairly simple, but there's a couple little hidden nuts and I'll show you where those are at. But right now what I got to do, since I'm never prepared, is I got to gather up the tools so I can show them to you. So stay tuned. All right, gathered a few tools. Probably gonna be gathering a few more as we go along, but I just kind of grab what we normally need. But basically, you know, you're gonna need your socket wrench. I like to use an extension because there are some nuts and bolts on here, especially on the bottom side of the case, that it's easier to get at. A 13 millimeter box end wrench. Of course, your 13 millimeter socket. I usually grab the long deep well one for this particular nut right here. This is if you have a dual port engine that holds the manifold in place. If you have an older case, you won't have that. But it looks like somebody's already done the liberty of loosening it up for me, probably because they took the intake manifold off. So I probably won't really need the deep well socket. I usually run dual carb, so I don't usually run that. But on Simon there, yep, Simon, he's out there and catching the last few rays of the year before he goes in for hibernation. But I do run a stock style. It's not a stock intake manifold, but it is kind of built in the stock style, and I do utilize this with his intake. The first thing we're going to have to do is pull off the oil pump. I did the liberty of pulling a majority of the stuff off on this engine. I did leave the oil pump, and this is your tool you use for removing the oil pump. I've kind of modified a little bit. Sometimes it doesn't want to pull off all the way, so I just stack some extra washers in there. And as you can see, this has been modified too. The one that comes with this bracket was actually bent. Sometimes those oil pumps are in there really good. And then here's something that I haven't really used a whole lot. This is your case splitting tool. Basically it goes in to where your oil pump is, and then you start turning the screw and it starts spreading it out, and it helps separate the case. I've gone years without this tool. I don't know why. I've never spent the money on it. They're really not that expensive. I've always just kind of used a dead blow hammer and a screwdriver, and hammered it in certain places where it wasn't going to hurt anything. But when we get to that part, I'll kind of show you where I like to tap and where I like to use a screwdriver. I know there's a lot of people out there that say don't use a screwdriver, but if you use it in the right spot, you won't cause any oil leaks. So the first thing first is to remove the oil pump, and we will need a 13 millimeter wrench and possibly a screwdriver to do that, and some rags, because this thing is full of grease and chips, and I'm probably gonna get my hands dirty. I'm just going to loosen and remove these 4 nuts. And kind of looking at these, looks like these may have been removed before, because generally the stock ones have like a red insert. I believe that red insert's kind of like a nylon locker, but yet I think that's supposed to help seal so you don't get any oil leaks. I will correct myself. Can you see that? There is a red insert on these nuts. So that would be a stock style nut. In case you missed the last video, this is going to be, I believe, a 2276 cc, or for your other guys, 2275. Round it up, makes it bigger, right? Which that makes it 82 millimeter crankshaft with a 94 millimeter piston. Don't remember what we had for rods in that. It'd be interesting. I'm gonna go to pull this engine down. I built this engine several years back. I don't remember what we used for internals. So now we'll just remove the cover. That came off nice and easy. And maybe if I flip this engine around, you guys will be able to see what I'm doing a little better. There we go. Being a little stubborn. Actually, the oil pump doesn't look all that bad. Okay, now we need the fancy tool here. I probably won't need all the washers at first, so I'll just set them aside. But when you're in here, there is a hole on this side, and then one on this side, and that's what this hooks into. And the trick is to start pulling. So let's get this on, and then actually we have to loosen some bolts too. I like to run it this way. I don't know if you guys recognize this. This is a fancy chrome pulley beauty ring. But we'll get this started, and then we'll loosen up a couple of bolts here. Now this case half has a nut here we're gonna loosen. And another one right here. And then this one here is actually got a bolt and a nut. And that's where the box end wrench comes in handy. There's actually 3 of these on this case. 2 on the bottom and 1 on the top. You got one located right here, and then one located right here at the rear of the case. A little later, I'll show you the one that's on the top. Gotta get a tool. I'm not sure if that's a 19 millimeter or a standard, but when you have an any size wrench, that works too. So now we're just gonna like tighten this. Actually, I just heard it break. And you can actually start watching the oil pump move. The loosening these bolts helps. And since this is a stock oil pump, we're probably not going to need the washers because I can see them are already past the studs. Nope, nope, it's not all the way out. And this is where the washers come in handy. It was almost there. I don't know if I've covered this in a previous video, but before I remove all the case nuts, I'm going to take these guys out of here. These are where your oil relief springs are at, and it's a good idea to remove them so you can clean all the oil galleries really well. How I remove them generally is with this dull chisel, and I'm just noticing it is made by Craftsman. And then good old hammer, which I probably got from my dad, which he probably got from his dad. So basically just figure out which way they're going to unscrew. I'm probably going the wrong way. Screw in, screw, yeah, I think I'm going the wrong way. So I just get a really good bite on it and then start hammering away. And make sure you hit the punch and not your thumb. And it's a probably good idea to replace them with like the screw-in type. They've got them, they're like a big bolt, or they got them where they use like an Allen wrench. I've seen them done both ways. There's one, big spring. The back one should be a small spring. This one's a little tougher to get at. The nice thing about this chisel, like it works as a big screwdriver. You can finish pull it up. Big screw and a spring. So we get the handy fishing pole again. Get the spring out of there. I like to continue running the stock springs if you can. Oops, that one's running away. But they do make aftermarket ones that have a little more pressure to them. And then there should be a little, if they're not stuck. That one looks like it's stuck in there. I'll probably have to get it out when it's in the parts washer. This one's moving. There it is. And I also kind of like doing this, running the stock plungers. I usually run like this one. Usually they have like two styles. I don't know if I have one handy, but the other one has like a groove in here. I tend not to run the grooved ones. That one's going to be a little more stubborn. Well, I'm done wasting time with that. I'm going to have to play with that one in the parts washer. Sometimes I get a little bit of solvent on the back side of that, slide out of there. But the idea is going to be when you go to put them back in, make sure that they slide back and forth, because you don't want one of those to get locked up. You'll wind up probably blowing an oil cooler or possibly starving the main bearings from oil. All right, like I previously mentioned earlier, there is this one down here. It's got a nut and a bolt. Like I said, I always like to save the German stuff, especially these nuts and bolts here. And you can see there's these wave washers, or a spring washer, I do believe they're called. But there'll be 3 of these on this case. And you have to pay attention because one is longer than the other 2. Just so you know where it goes when you go to put it all back together. But of course, the short one won't go where the long one's supposed to go. So you'll probably know you made a mistake by the time you get there. And the other one is up on top here. And I believe this is the long one. And generally the 13 millimeters are all the way around the outside here. What you got to pay attention to is there's this one here, and then there's one more 13 millimeter up here. You can see all this grease in here and how easy it would be to miss this. And then you'll have these 3 case half nuts here. These are 17 millimeter. And generally there is a nut and a spring washer. Sometimes you get these engine cases and they are just caked. Yep, that one's going to require a screwdriver. So the last thing you want to do is strip one of these out, because that'll be a bad day. I don't know if you guys have one of these little flexible magnets, or I call a fishing pole. They do come in handy. Alright, I'm going to finish unbolting all this. You guys probably don't want to watch me do that, so I'll be back. Point another thing out. I don't normally reuse the nuts that are on the main case nuts, the big ones. The ones that take a 17 millimeter socket or wrench. But I do get one of these out of here. Try and save and reuse these washers. I generally go with a nylon locker, and one reason I like to use the nylon lockers because they use a 19 millimeter socket. And there's more of a holding down effort with the larger nut. Now, one other thing before I start splitting the case half is don't forget to remove your oil drain pan. You'll never get the case apart with that on there because it actually bolts to both halves of the case. So I'll get right back with you when I start to split this case. We're just about there. All right, now the moment of truth. Now this lovely tool does use a 9/16 wrench, or an any size wrench works really well too. Basically the idea is we're going to adjust it so it fits in here. And then we're going to use it basically to push the two case halves apart. It is a little cumbersome to work with. And I like to go just a little bit, and I can actually already see that the case is starting to split in half. That's good. But it wants to tilt this way. So I also like to take the hammer, and like I said before, I'll tap like on these ears. Especially this one's got really good ears. In all the many cases I've took apart, I've never broke one of these ears off. But this is the part where I teach you, don't do what Clinton does. Make sure you put some safety glasses on. Yeah, look at that. It just split apart really nicely, and this is probably loose, yep. Feel it, this thing got loose again. Like I said, sometimes it wants to pry up this way, then bring it up there. Sometimes it wants to kind of pry this way against the studs. And that's where we're using a screwdriver up front here. Comes in handy. I generally like to use one that's kind of got a flat surface on it, but I don't have one handy right now. But I just kind of stick it up in here just to help free things up. I could probably pull this thing apart. But up in this area, as long as you stay above this bolt here, there's no oiling there. That's just a flat surface, and whenever you put your sealant on there, you're going to fill in the groove anyways. What you don't want to be doing is prying back here and around here or anywhere along the bottom here, because especially the bottom, because that's where all the oil is kept. Let's see if this thing will come apart, and we'll probably hear some lifters fall. Need a couple more taps here. There we go. And she comes apart. Voila. Set that down there. Be sure to grab your tool back out of there. And any lifters that have fallen in there, but I got lucky today. Lifters stayed with that case half. Won't be needing the main seal anymore. Oh, we'll need those though. These are the end place shims. And I save each and every one of these because they're hard to find. I do see that the camshaft does have the VW logo on it, so it is definitely a stocker. I'll probably save it, but I don't know why. It is a flat cam, or they say flat cam. This surface is flat, where the Super Beetle one was dished. I generally save my lifters too. I used to send them out to be reground. Unfortunately, this year we lost Steve Long of SLR Racing Cams. He was the guy that ground basically my performance camshafts, which like the one I'm running in Simon, and all my lifters. So I am looking for a new camshaft grinder. If you guys know anybody, please leave a comment down below. And we'll remove this crankshaft. I'm not going to use it, but I'll put it on the shelf over here. And we'll see if this distributor drive shaft gear comes out easily. And that's going to fight me a little bit. All right. It was a bugger, but I got it. Be sure to save the two washers here that come on the bottom of this. I'll usually save this. One of the tricks they do, if you're not going to be running a fuel pump, is I'll grind this off. And maybe grind it a little bit off of this center mass too. Just lightens things up if you're still going to run a distributor. I run EFI with a crank trigger, so I don't even run this in my case. But as for this build that's coming up, I think he runs an electric fuel pump, so we'll probably maybe add that little trick to it. I got a friend that runs a lathe. One of the other tools I didn't grab earlier, I got this custom bent screwdriver, and then some of these flat tip pliers here. This works great for getting this center main bearing out. It works great. It hooks so you don't lose it. Take a look at that. Still got VW bearings in it. I'm hoping this is a virgin case. And then what I use this for is all these little doodongers here. Your bearing stops, pins, whatever you want to call them. Works great for getting these out of here. Definitely save those too. Okay, and then cam bearings can come out. And this one here, I usually just kind of, there's nothing to hook on that. And now they fell down into nowhere. I should be able to grab it with these. It just wants to keep falling. And one more case half here. Some I don't normally practice too much, but I think I'm going to knock this out of here. Makes it easier to clean down in there, and I'm going to probably weld an extension on it anyways because we run a deep sump on this engine. Oh, don't forget the cam plug. I don't know if I've ever seen a engine with a lifter stuck in it before. I guess that's good. It means they're tight. And one more pin. But I won't be able to hammer that out until I get it secured somehow. There's a 10mm nut that's on the bottom of this. If you guys haven't checked out my how to add a deep sump to your VW engine, I'll try to remember to link it down below, but I explained what I like to do for these studs. So I'll be removing all these. And then you have to kind of do this now that the engine's apart, because there's really no way to get at this 10mm nut when the engine's together. That's about the only thing that's really holding this on, other than it's pressed in down here. And when you purchase a deep sump, it comes with a hose clamp and an extension. And it just hose clamps onto here. I like to go in and weld. I know I'm not the greatest welder, but this stuff welds pretty good. And don't miss the washer. That's the last thing you want running through the engine. Sometimes these come right out, sometimes they don't. I feel it moving. Now CB Performance actually sells one of these with a really long cut to length tube on it. That's probably your best way, and maybe I'll get one of those one day and actually install it. We got to build an Emily for, or got to build an Emily. We got to build an engine for Hubert, Emily's car. Maybe we'll utilize one of those because they're not that hard to install, but you do have to know a couple tricks, otherwise they don't go in. There we go. I don't want to hit it too hard because then you wind up banging it up a little bit, which I did. But we'll weld it, straighten it out, and put it back in. All right, a couple things before I go. I've visually checked this over, and I'm really liking what I see with this case, but I've got two more things here to check before I clean it all up. There's probably a third thing I want to check before I actually take it to the machine shop, but I'm not worried about that right now. First, I want to see what the line bore is and if it needs a line bore. And I don't think I've ever built an engine that I didn't have line bored. You can kind of see and actually feel where the bearings have kind of pounded the case a little bit. Now this right here is where the oil runs through. And you can actually feel that that is raised from this surface here where the bearing sits. And it's done on all three. And there's a little bit of a lip on this front one too. I got two tools for that. One is just a steel straight edge. And the other one is this Energy One, I think that's how you pronounce that, a line bore checking tool. It's just great for swap meets. And we'll find out if this is a virgin case or not. But basically, what we're going to do with the straight edge, we're just going to kind of stick it in here and kind of just run it back and forth and see where it scrapes. And as you can see, it didn't even touch here, but it touched really good in the center, and it touched a little bit on the front. Now this is raised, so you can't go by that, but yeah, that pretty much tells that this case needs a line bore. This is just a tool that somebody made that's really nice and handy. I've only used it a couple of times, but if you flip it over, it's got numbers on it. Basically, when you line bore a case, you either do 20 over, 40 over, 60 over or 80 over. I think you can go a little bit more than that, but most people don't like to run them if they're more than 20 over. But it's kind of hard to find an old used case that hasn't been line bored once or twice. But we're gonna go stick the 20 in there and see if it goes in. And it doesn't. I don't know if you can see the light underneath there. Yep, light underneath there and light underneath there. So this case is fresh. We got ourselves a virgins, fellas. Yeah, we got good news. That's good news. Now the hard part is cleaning this all up. After I get it cleaned up, I'm going to actually torque the case back to what a stock setting is at and see if the case halves here all pull together. And I think I've already kind of got that covered in another video. But if you guys do want to see it, let me know. I'll make maybe I'll try making a short or something. I haven't tried the whole YouTube shorts yet. Most all my shorts I wear in the summertime. I know, bad dad joke. You guys probably don't want to watch me clean this up. So this is where I'm going to leave you. Yeah, so keep shifting those gears, keep cruising, and always enjoy the ride. We're out of here. 4 hours just